All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for Emergency Food Services and COVID-19. I'm so excited to have some amazing panelists here with us today. And before I introduce them, I want to introduce myself, which I often forget to do. But we're used to seeing some of my other colleagues up here, Colleen and Ashley. But I'm Emily. I'm filling in for Ashley today, and I'm our Impact Programs Manager for our educational programs here at the Beard Foundation. We are so thrilled to have Mary Nesbitt, Chef Greg Silverman, and Chef LaToya Meaders here today with us. And before we kind of dig into it, I thought we could just talk quickly about how this webinar is going to work today and how you can interact with us. So this session is being recorded. If you came late, if you missed it, we're going to send out the recording after this wraps, or likely sometime tomorrow you'll receive that, and it will be updated on our website as well. We're going to save all of our questions for the end, but we know that sometimes something, a topic will trigger a question for you, so feel free to just type it in using that questions box, and we'll get to it towards the end. If you're having any technical difficulties, my colleague Colleen is standing by, helping me out for any of those. So you can just use the questions function for that as well. If your audio isn't working, your video, something's weird, so just let us know. And with that, I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves, and we can start with LaToya. So, Jeff, could you please share with us just a little bit of background on your organization, where you're located, your mission, and a little bit about you and your organization?
Okay, sure. So my name is LaToya Meaders. I am the owner and co-founder of Collective Fare at the Brownsville Community Culinary Center. My partner and I started Collective Fare in June of 2019. Prior to that, he was the chef instructor at the Brownsville Community Culinary Center, which is a 40-week nonprofit culinary training program. He and I wrote the 10-week culinary training program, and then I came on as a catering director there. We were there for about 4 years, graduated over about 150 students out of the program. We saw some things that needed to be changed. We sat down as a collective, and we saw that there was a revenue model that needed to be built out of that, and that's when Collective Fare was launched in August of 2019. So we decided that we wanted to create more jobs within the Brownsville community. So we are a full service catering company, and since COVID, we pivoted to becoming a food service hub for the Brownsville community and most of East New York.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much. And moving right on to Mary, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about you and about MANNA Food Bank.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Nesbitt. I'm the Chief Development Officer at MANNA Food Bank in the beautiful city of Asheville, North Carolina. Before I jump in about a little bit about MANNA, I just want to thank everyone and say how thrilled we are in particular for this opportunity, because there's a natural affinity between the work of those of you that are listening, the James Beard Foundation, and food banks. Because I think essentially what it boils down to is that we are both, as organizations, entities, and people, we are all passionate about feeding people and their souls. And so this opportunity was especially exciting to us as a food bank, and also representing our sister food banks across the country. MANNA's mission is to involve, educate, and unite people in the work to end hunger in Western North Carolina. We are 37 years old. In our first year, we were so thankful to be able to provide 40,000 pounds of food across 16 counties in our region. And to give you a little idea of our current scope, right now, amidst this unprecedented crisis, we're now providing 47,000 pounds every single day. So that is what the need is out there right now. Predating COVID, we were over 40,000 pounds a day at that time. So we have lots of programs to support people who don't know where their next meal is coming from. And just to quickly name a couple, beyond distributing food to 200 partners across our 16 counties, which consist of faith-based organizations, shelters, soup kitchens, church basements, anywhere we can find a place to reach people. We also operate a helpline where no matter where you are, people can call and get connected to food near them to get hands-on help with the SNAP application and other essential resources. And then lastly, something that is so central to our heart is our MANNA Packs for Kids program, where we serve when school's in session and when hopefully it's back in session soon. We provide weekend meals for kids that are eligible for free lunch and have with 165 schools across Western North Carolina, and pre-COVID served over 5,000 kids every week. A little bit about us.
Great. So much, Mary, for sharing that. And Chef Greg, last but not least, tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization.
Sure. Well, first, thanks for all the chefs and food systems folks on the webinar today, and for all the work James Beard has been doing for decades and decades, and especially in the last few weeks and months, how they've really stepped up in new ways. Really impressive. My background as a chef, I used to own 3 restaurants in Ithaca, New York for a long time, and then I made a shift and to feeding hungry people instead of just feeding my sort of wealthier customers. So all I care about is it's the same thing. Nothing's changed. I want to make sure my customers get the best food and the best service. And that's what we do at the Westside Campaign Against Hunger. For 40 years, we've been direct service emergency food provider, which translates to, we created the free grocery store model for pantries 25 years ago. People come in, they shop for food. The difference is it's free. We're super excited that we give out, last year, almost 1.8 million pounds of food. 45% of that is fresh produce. So when we receive unhealthy, ultra-processed foods, we do not distribute them. Like, we're here to help lift people out of food insecurity with healthy food and not with just calories, right? The anti-hunger community that I'm a part of is very focused on how many pounds we give out. And we gave out 120,000 pounds of food last week in a direct service way, but that's not just what really matters. What really matters is, are we giving people engagement? Are we treating people with the dignity and respect that they deserve? And we make sure that happens partly because of the way we work, the way our customers are volunteers, the way we have customers on our board of directors, the way we think about our half dozen social service staff who do interviews with every single one of our 22,000 customers to make sure they're getting the benefits they need, because food is nice, but the truth of the matter is getting someone moved up into a larger apartment, getting workforce support, getting health insurance, getting SNAP. These are the things that really lift people up out of food insecurity. And if we're not caring about those wraparound services, then we're just back to where we actually started, which was just handing people a bag of food and saying, like, go forth. Like, that's not what we're about. We're about dignity, community, and giving choices for everyone. And we've been trying to do that for 40 years on the front lines here in Upper New York City. So we're based on the Upper West Side on 86th Street, but most of our customers come from further north, Washington Heights, Inwood, East Harlem, South Bronx. So if you know New York, it's coming through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subway lines and making your way down. And that's what we've been doing for 40 years.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for all of the work that you all are doing in your communities before this pandemic hit and everything, got a little bit crazy. I think now we're all familiar with what's going on. We have, these record numbers of unemployment, lots of people out of work, a problem that, was already quite bad, got significantly worse. So lots of hungry people. And so I'm curious, and Mary, maybe we can start with you. how have you seen the needs of your community change since the start of the pandemic, and how are they continuing to sort of evolve and change as this rages on?
Well, as you can imagine, when COVID hit hard in mid-March and made it necessary to close non-essential businesses and schools, it plunged, as we're all well aware, it plunged so many people into an economic crisis overnight. And so literally within a couple of days, the lines at our pantries hit record numbers. And it was so profound because there were so many people, and you can imagine the industries, including the culinary industry, including, Asheville, for example, is a tourist destination. So we have an economy largely driven by hospitality, artisan, the culinary, amazing culinary community. And so many people found themselves, as I said, plunged into economic crisis overnight, showing up at our pantries and saying, I've never had to ask for help before in my life. We had people coming to MANNA. I had two service people who knocked on our door here at MANNA a couple days in, and I have been a waitress for 16 years. I've never missed a day of work. This is the first time I've ever needed help in my life. And we heard story after story of all the people furloughed from their jobs. I'm sure that, Chef Greg experienced the same thing, LaToya, and so on. But the need just exponentially increased. Same with our helpline. Our calls went up 174% in that first week of people reaching out to find the resources that they need. And as Chef Greg said, it's not just food, it's other resources that they need, essential and basic needs. So as MANNA, we went into rapid disaster response mode immediately and had to transform literally every aspect of our work within a matter of days. Just one quick example, for the health and safety of everyone, we had to go from our client choice pantry models and so on that we had across our network to immediately going to family box meals, where on site, as we're loading them into people's trucks or trunks, we could add the fresh produce and eggs and milk and the perishable items at the time of giving them to the clients. But we had to just get to that low to no contact way to get food to people safely. And thankfully, our network responded so amazingly to keep operations running across our network at our various pantries and shelters and so on.
Yeah, great. I think one of the things that is a little bit more heartening about this situation is how the communities are responding to this, and to responding to organizations that are working so hard to feed people who are hungry in their communities, and just watching people rally around, I think, has been very heartening. But LaToya, just moving over to you, same kind of question. How have you seen these needs change in your community, and what sort of changes have you had to make with collective fare to kind of address that and meet this moment in that way?
Yeah, wow. The work you guys are doing, Mary, and it's just absolutely amazing. Yeah, so if you know anything about Brownsville, it is one of the largest underserved communities in North America, largest densely populated of NYCHA houses. There's always been a issue in this community for as far as food access, food desert, and food insecurity, the ability to get fresh produce and things that you would find in other parts of Brooklyn. That's one of the foundations. That is one of the foundations of the Brownsville Community Culinary Center, was to address these issues through education, through accessibility, and also through creating opportunities for people so they learn about food, but also how to be advocates in their community, and creating we were the first sit-down restaurant in 50 years in that community. It was amazing. Collective Fare also spun off, and we were addressing these things. Entire menus that we would do would be plant-based, so that we could, explain to people like this is a healthy way of eating, and it can be fun and even in a celebratory manner. When COVID hit, we pivoted our entire model, and one thing we noticed was, what do you do with the community in crisis during a crisis? That was one of the things that really struck home to us. Our executive chef, Femi Rodney Frazier, being of West African descent, had family members that were in Sierra Leone during the Ebola crisis. So it was a snap to decision for us for exactly what we had to do. We started feeding the seniors, and we started noticing that unemployment is going to hit, and it's going to hit hard. If you look at the landscape of New York City, most people that work minimum wage jobs work in stadiums and all of these other things that we're going to not, that were not going to be utilized. So these were going to be the people that were the hardest hit, as well as the participants that we put through the program. We put out participants that were going to work in the food service industry that were now displaced workers. So we started out with feeding about 200 seniors a day, scaled that to 800 within 2 weeks, with partnerships through Rethink and through World Central Kitchen. And then after that, we scaled to 2,000 meals a day. We started feeding people and being able to hire back the participants that came through the program, as well as we partnered with an organization called University. We have a 10,000 square foot space. We partnered with 3 organizations, University, BMS, and City Harvest, and we were able to convert our basement into a food access hub. What we managed to do in the last 3 months was something that was quite amazing. We were moving thousands of pounds of food, 10,000 meals a day, fresh prepared meals a day. The community, as what Mary was stating, when we first started, the line was very small, and by the time the 3rd week hit, I had never seen anything like it before. It would wrap all the way around the block. You're talking about 200 to 300 to 400 people that would have to come out because there's nothing, and it's so it's sad. It breaks your heart when you see like something as small as a meal could change somebody's life. We were dealing with a lot of other issues like social distancing and explaining to people like how do they keep themselves safe during this time. It's really been quite an ordeal, but it's been beautiful because we've learned so much and been able to grow and create something, a beacon for the community. So the changes that we've seen so far are we're looking into other initiatives. One, to address the food service insecurity, or the food insecurity rather, as far as teaching people how to utilize their SNAP benefits efficiently. To Gregory's point, that is an issue we see a lot, where the people will get the SNAP benefits, but or the food that is coming sometime from the food banks or the other food access points, they're processed foods. Do you put that in the community? And the answer is obviously no, because it doesn't help. Yes, it may be calorie heavy, but it's not nutritious food. It's not food that it helps bolster the immune system, especially if you're going through hard times right now and people are getting sick. The last thing you want to do is, I've literally turned away 4 pallets of bacon. Like, they came and they were like, do you want this? I'm like, what am I going to do with that much bacon? That's ridiculous. Like, Mystic, all types of things that obviously high fructose corn syrup. I don't feel right serving that food to the community. So it gets turned away. I don't know where it went, but I wasn't putting it in Brownsville. So if we look at the way that how people look at our communities, and it becomes sort of like a food dumping situation, and that's not what we want. We want to make sure that people are healthy at all times.
Yeah, not all calories are created equal, right? And as you know,
not in any way, shape, or form.
for emergency feeding service, you have a responsibility to sort of help people who are most at risk and most in need, and they're coming to you for support. And so feeling and having that responsibility towards this community in a way where it's like you're turning away 4 pounds of bacon. I
Yeah.
think just
I mean, we've even gotten to what we do now is if we know ahead of time what's coming off the trucks, what Collective Fare does is we've put together like sort of like recipe cards that allow people to pretty much play like a little chopped. So you have the beans, you have the rice, you have the this, you have the that. These are the type of meals that you could make because what we've noticed is that sometimes you can give people a box of food, but do they know how to prepare it correctly? Is the food, are they going to cook the nutrients out of the food? Are they going to prepare it where like for taste and for flavor? I mean, yes, we may be quarantined, but right now, I mean, a delicious meal is everything, you know? So if you teach people how to cook, what do they say? If you teach a man how to fish, then he fishes for life. So that's sort of where we sort of built our foundation at because we thought it was very important for people like especially during this time, to really have something to grasp onto and to create a really sustainable situation in the community.
yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. And Greg, I would ask the same to you. Sort of shifts have you seen? And a quick follow-up, which I didn't tell any of the panelists I was going to ask this, but are there any changes that you made in response to COVID that you think you're going to bring over into whatever our post-COVID world looks like?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, what Chef LaToya said, I just wrote down, it's always been an issue. And I think this fits for most of these things. Like, we are in a new emergency in certain ways, but in truth, my organization and most food banks have been around for about 40 years. Like, there's no such thing as an emergency that lasts 40 years. It's not an emergency, it's an absurdity. Like, and so when we think about this, like, oh, all of a sudden all these people are hungry, it's like the folks who've been coming to visit us have been hungry for decades. And the idea like multi-generational poverty that we've allowed, and that's what we've done, we've allowed to continue, is the larger issue. I mean, at WISCA in February, we're proud that we serve so many customers, 22,000 customers. In February, 1,300 seniors came to our 86th Street location, not counting all of our mobile efforts. In March, only 600 seniors showed up, right? Because you're a senior, you've been told stay home to be healthy. You're a high risk, most of these folks. And also, by the way, most of our customers are Latinx. Many of are undocumented, and no matter what, they continue to be scared by what our federal administration is doing to them. And so people weren't showing up. But who was showing up? Because our numbers went up 388%. Our new customers were the essential workers of New York, right? Bus drivers pulling their buses over on 86th Street to come out and get food. Uber drivers stopping their cars to get food. Workers coming back from the grocery store where they're getting paid minimum wage to actually get food instead of getting it at the grocery store. Folks working at senior centers. So the people who are on the street doing the work as essential personnel saving our city were the ones who needed the food, and they were coming out more. And for our seniors that we couldn't get food to, all of a sudden we partnered with DoorDash and United Way, and we were able to start delivering food directly to people's door, right? This is the convenience and the dignity that anyone with the economic means is doing before, during, and will be post-COVID, like ordering your food to be delivered at home. Why would you want to waste your time driving across the city to go to a grocery store when you can get it delivered to your door? I mean, that's a convenience. And so we found that like this is something we'll continue, right? Like we want to give people choice. That's essential to what we do. Want to come to the grocery store? Great. Want to stop at our mobile market to pick it up in your neighborhood? Great. You want it delivered to your door? Great. Those are choices that you should get. Fill out a survey, tell us what your favorite products are. We're going to adjust the foods that we bring in. This is what normal business does for their customers. You treat them with the respect they deserve. And I think we had to move all our operations out onto the street. Like in 3 hours, we moved 25,000 pounds of food out of our building into what we just rented it within an hour, a refrigerated truck, put all the food on the truck. And the next day we're distributing food in the rain in mid-March to make sure our customers kept getting food. Our social service team stopped having in-person interviews, right? It went to being virtual interviews with our customers to sign them up for benefits. And you know what we're finding? A customer who normally comes with all their documents to sign up for SNAP, food stamps, oftentimes will say, oh, you know, you're missing this one document. We can't fill out this form fully. You need to come back. Well, now you're at home, you're on the phone, and you actually turn your phone and you take an image photo of the other document, and now we've just saved you travel time. And it's not about, you know, some people say, oh, great, people have saved time, they can go get a job. It's like, no, we've saved time. People can do whatever they want with that time. They want to take care of their grandkids. They want to read a book. They want to get a job. They want to, you know, watch TV. I don't care what someone wants to do with their time, but I want to save it for people. And so you ask, like, what's changed? Like, in our planning last year for our 5-year plan, COVID has just fast forwarded our efforts, collaborating more with other groups across the city to push our initiatives. You know, we have a collective purchase model with 6 of the largest pantries in the city. We've saved 20% on our food costs, and now we're pushing the city in different ways. You know, when we see, last week we got 10 pallets of the shelf-stable food that the city is distributing to seniors in need, and we're like, whoa, we got it dropped off. We looked at, we're like, we can't distribute half of the food here. This isn't food. Like, this isn't 3 days of food. This is, you know, crackers and stoop waffles and things you'd get as your snack on an airplane. And so canned goods with 38% sodium. And so we actually unpack everything, use the crackers for snacks for people. We found the whole grains, use those. We have a pile, a mountain of canned goods that the question to LaToya's same point is like, I don't want to give it to someone else. Like I don't know if we just have a big bonfire of ultra processed foods, because if I say no to something, you know, the problem is the moment I say no to a product or LaToya says no to something, it goes to another group who doesn't have the capacity or the dollars to like purchase other food to say, no, we won't take it. They'll say, we have to take this.
And then we're dealing with food waste, and which is a whole nother hair pulling thing. It's cycle.
Yeah. So back to your point, it's always been an issue, right? So I'll pause. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and it's, you go around and around and around all day, and the truth is that there are so many systemic things that need to change in order for us to get to a place. Like, ideally, we would all be working ourselves out of jobs. Ideally, we wouldn't have this problem at all. And ideally, there wouldn't be an excess of canned foods that we have to have this like moral dilemma of whether we give it to somebody else or throw it away, or what do we do? There's no sort of right answer, but I think, you know, this group of people on this call are doing the best they can. Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I sometimes I hear this phrase a lot, work ourselves out of a job, and it's not about nonprofits and frontline emergency food and food systems change makers working themselves out of a job. It's other areas of our economy that probably need to work themselves out of a job. Like, there will always be a place to make change. And whether it's when we take the first step, if everyone has food security, then we're going to go after poverty. And when you go after poverty, we're still going to be going further up the supply chain related to how our food system delivers food. Like, you know, why those canned goods even exist in the way they do. You know, what's happening to farms. I lived in West Africa for 3 years, and what I saw with peanut farmers and millet farmers and cotton farmers is atrocious. And how, you know, but you know, we have to keep going further up the supply chain. And that means, sadly, we're always going to have a job, but it might be about working other groups out of jobs so that the community actually is fed. So I just always like this sort of idea built to last. And I think that's the key is, and this is why nonprofits shouldn't be run on a shoestring. Like, you actually want your best and brightest working in nonprofits, because if you don't have that and you want to pay your staff no wages because it's a nonprofit, like, you're never going to get to the changes you need. Like, and when donors, and you know, we talked to a lot of donors, do the same thing, like, oh, how little are you spending on your operations? How low is it? And I say, actually, I'm giving all my staff raises, and we're giving bonuses, and we pay full health insurance for our entire staff's family, and we have a 6% retirement match for our entire staff. Like, and they're like, oh, we don't even do that in the for-profit. We're like, that's not my, I don't care. What I care about is the most important people, essential workers, people on the front lines making change, are the ones who are most taken care of. And then others can be worked out of a job.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thought of people being proud of like slashing their budgets and how little they can spend on something, especially particularly their own staff, where it's like, that's not something to be proud of. We need to be investing more in our staff and in our community. And yeah, very interesting. Um, you, Greg and LaToya, you both touched on this a little bit earlier about partnerships with DoorDash, with World Central Kitchen. Mary, who is MANNA working with? Who have you all partnered with either before, or have any kind of partners, are there any new partnerships or have been strengthened because of the COVID pandemic?
We have so many partnerships. That's the only way this thing's is possible to be able to do what we're doing. And you know, those partnerships range from everybody from coordinate, like in this crisis, or not only in this crisis, but always the partnerships with the schools, with the health departments, with local government. And in this crisis, we also really saw a dramatic shift in our partnerships with our foundations and corporations and other people that have faithfully supported us for years. But I think that the gravity of this crisis really is transformative in those relationships, because it was not MANNA asking, can you please help us help these people during this crisis. It was them coming to us saying, how can we help? What is it you need right now to get food to these people? And so I think that, you know, every crisis brings about strengths in people and in partnerships. And this crisis has certainly done that. And the partnerships with our 220 partner agencies, who we were more interdependent than ever to make sure we could make things happen. So it's, you know, the list is endless. And it's our hope that post-COVID, when whatever that's going to look like, and when we get somewhere farther down the road, economic and public health crisis, and that's going to be a long road, that relationships like that and partnerships like that, and like the ones that Greg and LaToya were describing, that they will be transformed in, like, have deeper roots and deeper partnership in the work. And another thing I just wanted to add, based on what we're sharing, is one of our hopes is that because this crisis brought food insecurity and poverty and all of that into the public eye in ways that it hasn't been, you know, at least in, you know, memorable years. We're hoping that what we feel is that pre-COVID, food banks were kind of viewed as, isn't that a nice, efficient, you know, service that's provided to those who need it? And we really feel like this was an opportunity to change that conversation and for people to understand that the pervasiveness of hunger across this country pre-COVID, and how this crisis of so many people losing their jobs overnight and so on just worsened a problem that already existed. And so the fact that the public may have a deeper understanding, I mean, the images of the cars lined up in New York in line for food, the media images in San Antonio and those other places, we really hope that'll change the conversation about food insecurity and poverty in this country.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this leads nicely into the next thing that I want to ask you all about is, you know, with all of this attention on food insecurity in your communities, but also throughout the entire country, what are some local, state, what are some federal policy priorities? What are some things that we're looking at there to hopefully try and change?
And this, I'll jump in, but right now, the center is the coming before Congress is a 15% increase in SNAP benefits. And SNAP benefits are so essential. We can't food bank our way out of this situation. We can all help in tremendously impactful ways, but to bring the SNAP benefits to the people that need them with a 15% increase today, a single person on SNAP max benefits is $194 a month. That's $7 a day for food. And we all have been to grocery lately, and you see how far $7 a day could go for someone. And also coming out of this long road we have ahead of us around this economic crisis, SNAP also is an investment in the in the economy. It's an investment that then now people can go to the store or have someone deliver it, food, but be placing money back in to revive some of the economy that we need. So, someone's voice around the issue on a 15% increase on SNAP benefits could be so impactful in the lives of so many people across this country. And that's just right in front of us.
To piggyback off of what Mary's saying about the SNAP benefits, I wholeheartedly agree. In addition to, I would like to add that the one thing I would like to see them do with the SNAP benefits is allow for different types of purchases. At the beginning of the month, I don't know if anybody's ever witnessed it. I have every month. These people go to this grocery store and they load up on, just the most horrendous food, because if you don't use all of the SNAP benefits, then they get taken away from you. So that means that the people start to utilize the stuff that has the high fructose corn syrup, the stuff that is shelf stable, not a lot of fresh produce and things like that. What I would like to see, especially with the SNAP program, is that you're able to utilize some of your benefits for more fresh fruit stands, produce stands, but also some really healthy prepared meals, because that's where another gap is. So like what Collective Fare does, everything that we create that could be purchased via SNAP, but because SNAP doesn't allow prepared food, you have another situation. You have a time frame, because these women still have to work. They still don't have time to come home and prepare food for their children. So instead of them, getting McDonald's or something like that, why not be able to create some sort of additional service where, yes, maybe it's another certification that a restaurant or some type of food service entity must have. But if they're able to purchase some really great healthy prepared food, then that would help close that gap as well, so they can gain access to healthy food. Because I don't know about you, but if you're working 40 hours a week, still receiving SNAP, you have 4 children, and now you're still getting home at 6 o'clock at night, and you can't prepare a meal, how is getting SNAP even helping? Because the kids are eating the same food. They're not eating healthy food that the mom could have been cooking or could have been purchased from somewhere else.
Yeah. I think we're going to see so much of this. I mean, we've seen it a little bit already, but this food as medicine situation where SNAP needs to be accessible for healthy, nutritious food. Otherwise, it's a drain on our resources in a different way.
Absolutely.
So we'll obviously have a human right to be fed and to not be hungry. But if we're just looking at this in this kind of very harsh way of like just numbers, it's gotta be healthy food. Otherwise, we're gonna see it pop up in other ways. But Greg,
how else do we address these diet-related illnesses? All of these things are completely reversible if you're just eating properly. The hypertension, the diabetes, the everything that we deal with in these communities. And this is across the board. This is not just a Black issue, a white issue. This is an American issue. This is every state across this country that has these diet-related illnesses, because we don't have proper nutrition education. And we don't have time to teach people proper nutrition education. Or, it's just not something, they keep showing you that food pyramid that has nothing to do with how we're supposed to eat. So I'm sorry, we could talk about that. That's a whole nother panel. So So there's a lot to be done. That's like to what Greg is saying. It's a systemic issue that is it's not going to go away overnight. You can't food bank yourself. You can't give away enough food to cure this. This is an education thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at this sort of, and I don't know if it's actually a pivotal point in changing food insecurity in America. I mean, I would love to say it is, but like these are sort of, there's a lot of both ands that have to happen here, right? Like people deserve choice. Like the idea that you can't that you can't get a rotisserie chicken at the grocery store because you're on SNAP, but you can buy a raw chicken because if you're on SNAP, you actually, I guess, should have more time to do things. I mean, these are absurdities, and that, you know, and you probably have more issues with paying your heating bill for your stove as well. Like these kind of things are all interrelated. We need to give people more choice of the products. At the same time, we probably have to give less choice to the food industry, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
to LaToya's point about like I love that like restaurants are feeding people across the city right now, but I also see that they're just feeding oftentimes what's on their menus, and oftentimes their menus are not healthy. And the idea that, you know, we're back to like just feeding people unhealthy food is just going to lead to some of the same issues. And so we're seeing a lot of this sort of, let's just give people food right now, when the truth of the matter is we interview a lot of our customers, and what they're saying is they want staples in their fridge as well. They want to get a beautiful meal from a restaurant a couple nights a week, but they also want to be able to get up in the morning and open up a dozen eggs and have scrambled eggs for their kids. Like that's what dignity is, to say like I actually am in control of the fate of what I put in my family's bodies. Our customers all the time, you know, I've had some people say like, oh, what do you mean your customers want alternative dairy and they want, you know, local produce? I'm like, well, why wouldn't they? They
Right.
have those choices. Some people have lots of choices to make. So we have to give those options. And I think, you know, this is where it gets tricky, even at a federal level, when we think about weighing SNAP and increasing amounts. And we also look at things like the power of WIC, and it is a more constrictive program. And this is where the politics comes in of how you set levels at a state level for the entire state, for how many people, how much is in the budget. And I think this is very tricky. I think we have to make sure we're trying to advocate without it being like a teeter-totter, like, oh, if we increase SNAP, what are we going to cut instead? Like, no, we're
Right.
going to increase SNAP. And if you look at another COVID-related thing that's happened, you know, pandemic EBT, kids aren't getting meals in school, so they're actually getting dollars in exchange. Like, now this seems to me like something that should just continue. Like, let's actually put real cash in families' pockets, no matter where those families come from, because it's not a question, you know, this is the first time that SNAP in some sense is being used for folks who, you know, parents might be undocumented, kids are in school, they should be getting the same supports. Like freeing up the constrictions on SNAP for what it's supposed to be would be positive, right? Like we're also still in a position where, you know, we keep fighting back against the federal administration, trying to say like, if you're right, able-bodied without dependents, if you're a young person, and most likely it means if you're a young Black male in America on SNAP, you're going to get thrown off SNAP very quickly if you don't find a job. And what jobs are going to be out there for you? Like they're not going to exist. So constricting the time frame on SNAP is not how we lift people up out of poverty. It's how we keep people in poverty.
Right.
So I mean, I think at a federal level, like SNAP, I mean, also remind people like there's two things that they could be definitely doing at a federal level. Like every person should be reaching out to their networks to make sure they're signing up for the census, right? That's all. Like we have to be counted, and that's how the money flows into your communities. Is if
Yep.
people exist, and obviously registering to vote, because you know voting matters. If you didn't get that already. That's at a federal level. I mean, it's tricky to speak, you know, because I'm not sure where everyone's from on this call, but like, you know, when we think about in New York City, and I think it's the same in most big cities, using your city council and your mayor's office and pushing for more dollars into the emergency feeding sector, and pushing that there's choice again. Like money goes to pantries across New York City, for example, and most of it is used, every penny that's normally given to the emergency feeding sector in New York City every year, not counting COVID, is constricted to processed foods. We don't use all of our city dollars because I actually don't want, you know, the snack bars and the canned high sodium pork. But So we've been working and advocating to say, hey, to our city council members, are you really advocating for ultra processed food for the community? You know, in Brooklyn, you have a borough president who, right, speaks to curing his diabetes by being vegan. Well, I
Yes.
can promise you this, if he was food insecure using emergency feeding dollars from the city of New York, he would not have been curing his diabetes, and he wouldn't have been able to be vegan. He'd be eating ultra processed, terrible foods. Like, we have to ask our elected officials where their food dollars are going. Because it's not about, it's like food waste. Is it really that important if I save a half head of lettuce in my fridge? It's nice. But what's happening across the bigger picture, across way up the food chain, is much more important.
Yeah, I think that was so well said, and I love what you're saying about choice, because I shudder to think about all the people who don't take advantage of SNAP or don't take advantage of emergency feeding services because the offerings are not aligned with their cultural practices, their religious backgrounds, all of this kind of thing, that where there isn't any dignity. And so keeping that at the forefront of what you all are doing, I think, is just commendable beyond belief. And I know that we're running up on time, and I definitely want to save some time for questions. But before we do that, just love to ask each of you what you think webinar attendees, anyone on this call, anybody in the restaurant community, in the larger hospitality industry, what can they be doing right now to help support you and your work? And we can start with LaToya there.
Well, you can get out and vote. That helps a lot. Talk to find, no, I'm not a big proponent of the volunteer model. I'm sure me and Gregory would have great conversations about that. But as culinary professionals, definitely look into your food practices. Look into the food that you're preparing in your restaurants. Because, I mean, yes, the thing in America is we are very keen on our luxury foods. And those are great things to have, especially if we're celebrating. But if you're running like a day-to-day operations, look into like how you can create menus that are absolutely delicious and healthy. If we start a trend, then everyone is going to start to do it, and then everybody's going to start to be healthy. I mean, we started it a little bit back in the days with putting the saturated fats on the food and stuff like that. But then you're gonna see somebody come out with like a mega cup of something or whatever. I just think that we all need to be a bit more mindful of the trends that we start and the type of food, because there are people that need that should be taught to eat a little bit healthier, so that we could we could make the world a better place. I don't know. But I think that's a start. Uh, if you can help out any way, shape, or form, if there's a local charity by you, or if there's food insecurity in your neighborhood, you can always, in restaurants we have a lot of food waste all the time. Find a way to repurpose that food. Find a way to give back. I mean, it's really probably nothing out of your pockets. It's nothing out of what you do. Um, and then each one teach one. There are a lot of young kids out there that are about, they want to help, but they need to be led into the right direction. So I think that's another thing as culinary professionals, that we can do. You can always support, and if it's not something that you're interested in doing, find another organization out there that you can support. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, thank you for that. Super actionable. Greg, anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, right. I talked to a lot of different culinary professionals about these things, and I just wrote in James Beard a blog post today that speaks a bit to this, of how I use my skills as a chef into the nonprofit sector. Like, it's nice to donate food and to go to events to raise money, but I remember I was speaking to a chef, Hugh Atchison, one time. He was like, "Don't make me just raise money, like do an event for you. Like, let me use my brain power," because chefs are actually super smart and they're super fast in how they think about things. And you need to demand that you want, but you have to be willing to do this, like to get deep involved. If you're like, "Wow, I work with 20 farmers," well, maybe I could push those farmers to give a better deal to my local soup kitchen or soup pantry. There's all these things that you can do to actually move the needle. I would actually demand to get put on, that you want to be a part of something and get your organization on a board of a local entity. And I would also suggest, if you're the owner executive chef, you might want to put someone else in that role on the board. You might want to give an up and coming staff member, someone who wouldn't given this opportunity, like say, like, I'm putting this person on your board. We're going to contribute in these ways, but this is the person. And it's giving people professional development on your staff. It's also just engaging in your community. Like, you know about your supply chain better than emergency food sector people do. Trust me, they don't have the time, they don't have the staff, and you can actually help them save so much money. I can guarantee it. And you're going to push those purveyors in the same way you would for your own entities, in the name of another group. And back to, cultivate your customers, which you always do. You have customers who are the most important people in your communities. You have elected officials, you have very wealthy customers, most likely. You have, folks who run industries. You need to push them. Like, this is the time. If this is not the time to demand change, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, I feel fired up. That was great. Mary, anything that our listeners and attendees can do to support MANNA and to support their own communities? What do you got for us?
I think everyone on this panel has similar passions and similar goals, so I won't repeat, but I will, yes, I will repeat. The voting is so important, and advocating. Your voice matters on these issues, and the more voices that our legislators hear, the farther we're going to be able to go with all of this. And then I just also want to add that MANNA has been so fortunate to have amazing partnerships across the culinary community and with culinary programs. And to Greg's point about your creativity and your unique talents and so on, we have a partnership with Asheville Bunk. This is one example of so many. We have a partnership with Asheville Buncombe Technical College with the culinary school there. And they are going to be creating 3 and 4 ingredient recipes with items like produce and things that we regularly have available to our for our pantries, so that people can eat healthy, delicious food that's easy to make, can happen in 15 minutes, and so on. So this is a new partnership, but we've had others do similar things in the past. So to just there's food banks across the country. There's food banks near every single person that's listening, and food pantries near every single person that's listening today. And just reach out, and you can find ways to invest your talent and time, however is most meaningful to you, and make a huge difference in the lives of so many people. So let your creativity and your talent shine to help us lift these people up.
Very well said. Thank you all so much for sharing that. I want to just quickly open it up. I think we probably have time for one question. And you all should know that we've gotten a couple of comments in, not so much questions, but with people wanting to work with you all and asking how they can support you all. And I think we covered that. But I just think it's such a testament to the work that you all are doing, that it's like, so this was so inspiring that people are just like raising their hands, being like, I want to work with you guys. So if you have a question, please send it in and we'll get to it. And then while we wait for that, this was also not a prepared question, but something that I've been asking people on these webinars that we've been doing. But how are you all taking care of yourselves right now? Obviously, we're all in this industry where we're serving others, but how I'm always just curious about how people are like serving themselves and taking care of themselves. And no pressure. I know I didn't.
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, I'm super, obviously in New York City, essential personnel. So I go to work almost every day with my team, but I ride my bike a half hour each way down along the Hudson River to work every day from Washington Heights, and that sort of ability to get out and about and get fresh air and actually exercise. And also actually to stay, by being essential personnel, we actually get to talk to human beings and not be isolated. So it's easier sometimes, I think, for someone like me to be out and about as opposed to like my wife who's working from home. So just riding my bike and trying to talk to people.
Love that. LaToya or Mary, any self-care?
Yeah, Greg is right. New York is easier, especially, I mean, I hate to say this, but it was kind of cool with like nobody on the streets. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me. No traffic. I was like, this is nice.
Yeah.
Like, but it was very easy to engage with people. Like Greg said, you know, I don't ride a bike, but I would be able to get out, go for walks. You know what I mean? And enjoy the air. You know, when the weather warmed up, still people were still a little in. So it was good for me. My self-care routine is I shut down on Sundays. So Sundays between a block of time, I shut it down and totally just vegetate. Um, I am now starting to work from home because I am about to give birth. So, so during the COVID epidemic, not only was I running a business, I was also growing a human. So it was been an amazing, crazy ordeal, but it was absolutely amazing. And self-care was something that I put at the forefront of this the whole time because um, it was so overwhelming, especially when you're getting calls from people saying that they haven't eaten and that they didn't have anything. And if you're anything like me, I can't stand to hear that. So we will work like, you know, we were working 7 days straight. I had to find some time to really shut down and take care of me so that I can continue to do the work as the weeks progressed. Um, the last 3 months have felt like 2 years. They really have.
Yeah, crazy. Mary, anything that you wanted to add about?
I just add, because as essential workers, this has been intense, but I'm with Greg and LaToya. I'm glad I needed to be here every day. I've been with people. This operation had to keep going. We have volunteers from the community showing up every day. And I'm glad that it hasn't been a situation to be isolating. But when I am not here, I find it very grounding. I've gotten way overly enthusiastic about my vegetable garden and also cooking, because I find both of those things very centering for me amidst everything that's going on in our world right now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know we're just at time. We did get 2 questions come in, and I hope we can address them pretty quickly. So one is from Jazz Johnson, who wants to know your thoughts, and I'm assuming they mean both Greg and LaToya because this sounds New York focused, but your thoughts on community fridges popping up? Because she says she's in the process of scouting one
So
for
we actually have one of the organizations that we work with, University, they have been testing the model for us, and we've been working along with them. So when we get the fresh produce that comes in, we have a few community fridges, like 5 or 6, that are you know, throughout Brownsville, East New York. And I find that we've been finding it's quite interesting how in some places they're utilized, but in some places people are like, I'm not touching them. So there's still like I guess there's a mindset behind it. But you know, we are wholeheartedly trying to push the initiative because again, when we get the food in and we get an excess amount of fresh produce, sometimes it's, you know, we have leftover. So what do you do with that? We're not trying to create food waste. We want to make sure that those that maybe don't know about the services that we're providing, that are able to have the access or go and get it from those fridges. So yeah, we've been working along with that.
I think there's 2 things also. There's, right, refrigeration capacity is an issue for in the entire emergency feeding network. So having, at some point, you need the smaller location to drop things off in. But the key thing is how you track these things data-wise, like in order so that customers in the community know where these things are. I think there's apps like Plentiful that, you know, how we track. So someone, you know, in any neighborhood, you know, in Hamilton Heights and in Harlem can be like, oh, I know that there's 2 community fridges 3 blocks away. Like this is a tech solution in some sense for that's out there that the tech community could easily figure out, but we want to get people to the food. So refrigeration is great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then the last one, which I think is a good one to leave off on, is from Alex, and they are wanting to start a meal donation program in Chicago. So wondering if the three of you can just leave us all with some advice on what not to do when starting one of these new programs.
I'll
We
go
can start-
first. And I'm going to be the negative person here. I do not think we need more programs. I think people should be partnering up with existing strong programs that exist in the community and not creating new entities. It's not necessary. Like in New York City alone, we have 700 food pantries, 30% closed during COVID. That's a tragedy. But the truth of the matter is it did not decrease the distribution capacity 30%. It probably decreased it 10%, right? Like we actually need to be partnering and combining as opposed to just doing our own vanity projects. We're seeing it all over the country, all over the world, especially in the chef world, right? Like chefs all over are creating programs when they should be combining and their resources with local community groups where they can do great work.
To Greg's point, this is something that we see ongoing in the nonprofit world in general. Everybody working in these silos, and they all doing the same darn thing over and over and over again. If we all just put our resources together and our heads together, we could probably tackle the problem. Well, more than likely, we could tackle the problems a bit quicker because we'll be able to pool our resources. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with everything he just said. It's like if you got a program and that person got a program, it also from the nonprofit level, it messes with the funding because now you got to write all this separate grant money and it just becomes a mess and nothing really gets accomplished. The same people are still going to need the same thing. And, you know, to be all honest too, grandma is going to go to the food bank on that one on Wednesday and then go to another one on Thursday. And now now she's taking resources from somebody else that didn't know about the availability of that one program. So I'll leave it at that.
And I would just add into that, you know, start whatever ideas that you and others are having out there of things you can do or want to do. Start with finding out what's already going on and who's doing it, and then see how you might be able to fit meaningfully into that puzzle and make it even better. And then if you want to do doesn't exist out there, if what you're interested in, then you do have a chance to be a real innovator. But to their points that have been shared here, you know, first find out what's going on in your area and see if there's a way you could fit in and make it even better.
Yeah, also well said. So we're going to wrap it up here, but I just want to thank you all so much for everything that you're doing in your communities. I know it can't be easy, but that, you know, it's hard work, but someone's got to do it, and I'm happy that it's all of you. So thank you everybody so much for joining. Sorry that we went over time. You can find the recording of this webinar or more information about our programs at jamesbeard.org/relief. And with that, we will end it there. But thank you all so much again.
Thank you.
Nice
Thank
meeting
you,
you,
everyone.
Nice meeting you both.
It was a pleasure, really.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye, everyone.
LaToya, we'll be in touch.